Hello, everyone. This is Lee Andrews from Academy. Thank you so much for joining another Live with Lee. And today I've got two very special guests who are going to tell a story of a long-term relationship through ups and downs and how they handle the ups, how they handle the downs, and where they're at today. So let's get going. These minutes go by very, very quickly. Allow me to quickly introduce Barry Fiske and Phil Golub, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. However, I'm going to ask one of them to please start by introducing yourself by telling us what the relationship is between you two. And why don't we start with Phil?
Great. Thank you for having us, Lee. My name is Phil Golub. I live in the DC area, Alexandria, Virginia. I've been in the creative profession for about 23 years, and I have known Barry basically for about 10 years. Yeah. And I reported to Barry for about 7.5 of those years directly. He was responsible for a stint of my career at our previous employer that I think I look back on with great fondness, and I consider Barry not just a friend, but also a mentor, and someone who's taught me a lot about how to be a creative professional.
Yeah, awesome. And I'm Barry Fiske. Nice to meet everybody. I'm a longtime creative director, and Phil and I have worked together for a very long time. And you know, on our last job, it was really probably the most satisfying job that I've ever had in my career, in that Phil and I joined a company that was not necessarily a very creative or design-oriented company, and built an entire capability across North America. Phil actually built the Arlington office of that company, built an entire creative group. I did the same. I live in Boston. And together, along with a lot of other really smart people, we are incredibly proud of the work that we did, taking what was a technology and delivery-oriented company and making it a creative company. But of course, it all came to an end for the two of us and for many others, frankly, in our company, because of a number of factors, not the least of which was this major sort of shutdown in economic activity because of COVID-19.
All right, so let's back up for just a second. So Barry, how did you meet Phil for the very first time? How did that relationship connect?
It was so long ago, Phil, I have to kind of remember, but I think Phil was in, Phil had actually been sort of around, I think, a little bit almost like freelancing with the company. And I was helping to build basically a creative department in Boston, and we wanted to do a similar sort of digital agency style creative department in Washington, D.C. and Arlington in the tech hub. And Phil was very clearly sort of like more capable than just sort of the project that I think that he was working on at that moment. And I saw in him an opportunity to establish a leader that we could build a team around. So we were primarily designing back then sort of larger sort of systems design sort of websites and things like that. But I saw in Phil someone who I thought could recruit people, could mentor junior talent, and could do and lead a lot of creative projects far beyond just sort of classic systems design.
So it's interesting because you were specifically looking for somebody who could lead junior people.
Yes.
Yes. And create that capability. So today's economy right now, we've got UX practitioners who are junior, who are struggling to find that first gig. We've got UX practitioners at your level and Phil's level who are struggling to find opportunities because they're afraid that they're going to be charging too much during an economic downturn. So, but I want to keep that in the back of your mind as I ask the following questions. Phil, what attracted you to work with Barry? Because a leadership role in UX, you have to be very careful about who you work with, because your portfolio depends on it. Your portfolio and your career depend on the people that are managing you, right? So why Barry? Why did you say, okay, Barry, let's do this?
Well, for a number of reasons. I mean, first and foremost, the fact that Barry acknowledged that DC was a largely untapped market for that previous company. When we know, Lee, you and I both know that the DC area, the DC Baltimore corridor, if you will, is chock full of world-class talent. that I think is very frequently overlooked. And there's something here. There's also a lot of business in this area that is largely untapped. People think DC, they think government, and that is true. But what is also true is some of the largest travel and hospitality brands in the world are right here. Some wonderful and amazing retailers are here. And let's not forget, over the last 2 years, the biggest retailer on the planet is here. So, so why shouldn't we pursue that opportunity? That's number one. But number two, Barry is a uniquely gifted storyteller. And he told me a story of success in the making that I very much wanted to be a part of. And I knew I could recruit people to help us tell that story. And
that's a big part of it. I think in our story that might be different. So if you have a well-established creative brand that is really sort of cranking out hot work, and I'm a junior creative or a junior experience designer or a junior writer or a junior anything, it's very easy, I think, to kind of like want to jump on that bandwagon. That was not the case really when Phil and I were talking all those years ago. What I was talking about was a company where it was not obvious to see what your portfolio would be as a creative person joining what was largely a technology company. But what I was looking for were people that were particularly brave. And I think that's something that's important in this moment in time right now. Someone who could see the work that we were going to do down the road and how it was completely different than the work that the company was doing currently. And I was looking for people to get in before that bandwagon was really rolling, and to start to sort of like their passion alone was going to be what would have to sell people to join the company. And it proved out. We did amazing award-winning work, the kind of recognition that this company had never seen before, I think, because of a lot of people who joined based on the vision that we were able to talk about. As I think about people who may be out in the market right now, I think it's an important thing to keep in mind. The obvious players that have sort of like a great creative sort of marquee name are certainly an excellent option, but be on the lookout for places that now, I think because of the shock of COVID, because of the shock of what's going on, are going to embrace digital, embrace design, embrace sort of going direct to consumer, embrace a lot of the things that they may have only sort of like lightly given lip service to in the past. Those companies, if you can get in there and you trust a couple of the leaders, will create great work, not based on anything they've done in the past, but based on the opportunity ahead of them.
Wow, that's an interesting point. But the past will also tell you how they've created opportunity given those circumstances. So let's not rule out the past is what I'm hearing, but ask them questions about what they plan to do in the future given current situations.
Right.
And that's how to keep everybody's portfolio safe. I do want to go back to the storytelling point, because I will tell you, I was charged with recruiting for a TSSCI poly-cleared team. And your story, and that is why I had 100% retention of the original team for 3 years. That's unheard of, right?
Yeah.
Because we were on a mission to accomplish something important. So mission, right? What is the big problem that we're trying to solve, and how vested is that hiring manager? So when you look at Barry and you look at Phil, they're very vested. They believe in that mission, and that's the story.
That is very true.
What the story is. The story is the belief in the mission. That's what that story is.
We talk a lot about what a brand represents and a value proposition. The other word for brand is the reason to believe. And your own personal brand is, what are you going to believe in for yourself, and what value you're providing a company. Hugely, hugely important. And when you're having conversations with prospective employers, it needs to be focused on value, the value that you bring, not them to your portfolio, but you to their business.
Right. I also think it's important. It's really important to understand the purpose, the higher purpose of a company that you're trying to join. And to some degree, the higher purpose that you have yourself. The company that Phil and I worked for was about enabling human potential, which I think is very easy to sort of understand it in kind of like the cat hanging on a tree poster sort of way. Yeah. But in truth, when I thought about a lot of the work that we were doing, sometimes it was functional, sometimes it was beautiful and highly entertaining, but really it was about helping people be the best versions of themselves. That's a powerful mission to join. And that coupled with, I think, a vision that you're hearing from some people sort of painting about a different future, a different kind of creative work, a different level of design and kind of experience and service you're going to be able to create for people. That's exciting versus a company that just wants to talk about their product. And then similarly, I'm interested in people when I'm trying to hire them in the past who clearly have a mission beyond, I just want to be a great designer, or I just want to be a great experienced designer, or I want to sort of like scale the corporate ladder. People that have clearly a passion for health. If I'm looking for people to kind of work on pharma tech or health brand, people that have, I think, a real mission around trying to sort of like serve their community. If we were trying to find, in Phil's case, sometimes people working in government service, those kinds of things I think are really important to understand. What is your higher purpose as well as your sort of craft skills, and to talk about that, I think, when you're looking for jobs, and likewise to look for that in a company where you might want to join. Like, is this just a transactional company, or do they have a sense of sort of a higher mission? And am I aligned with that?
We are all singing the same tune on this call, that's for sure. So Amy Dalton has made a comment here. She said, big takeaway, direct interview convo to more of what I can bring and less on my portfolio. So it's not just
Very
your portfolio again of what you've done, it's what you want to do, how you apply what you know and how you know it. So I want to take a closer look at Phil, if you don't mind. I want to understand, what questions today would you ask a prospective leader if you were to take a job for them in your interviews as a senior member of the user experience community and design community? What questions do you ask a prospective manager?
As in a hiring manager, I'm
yes,
assuming.
A hiring manager. Yep.
I want to know most of all about the culture that they want to build and the community that they want to create. And is that a safe environment for me to grow and fulfill my own potential? To Barry's point, Barry and I spent a lot of time talking about community, talking about culture, the power of positivity and optimism. And that requires servant leadership. That requires the ability to empathize and listen before talking, as I talk a blue streak right now. You can pick up on that in an interview. If they're doing all the talking and no listening, that's how they're going to treat you on a daily basis. If they start off by saying, what questions do you have for me? Let me build a sense of trust that you are making the right decision, not me. That's a great place to start a conversation. And I know I can take it from there. And they're going to be bottom up. And when people ask me, what kind of leader am I say, I'm a bottom up leader. I'm there to serve them, not the other way around.
Right.
And I want to hear that from the people I'm going to be reporting to. That's how Barry and I operated. I like to think.
100%. Like, I think if I am a junior designer and the meeting is kind of oriented around the portfolio, frankly, if they're asking you little intricate questions and it's obvious that they have not looked at your portfolio before that meeting, that's a really bad sign.
Wait a minute, back up a second, because this is contradicting everything these kids are hearing.
Well, to me, the portfolio for junior people got them the meeting. And so when I ask junior people or mid-level people really about the portfolio in an interview, I'm not asking for intricate details. I'm actually looking for, do they understand how to talk about a broader idea and why it was important and the relevance of it? Because I want to look and go, can I put this person in front of a client? Can I have them sell? Can I have them explain the idea? If they immediately go to, well, I chose this color blue and it's got this kind of like line, that's art direction. I don't care about art direction. What I care about is, frankly, these days as designers, especially as experienced designers, what we are doing is we are designing business. We're designing sort of services. And so that's what's interesting is if you start kind of like where Phil was with, this client had a unique opportunity. Their customers had this very specific need. And we saw that by combining these things, we could provide this kind of service. And then we get down into that's why this actual experience works in this way. And the feedback that we heard about it allowed us to shape it and make it sort of work better in this other kind of way. None of that is about what it looks like, how it works, really. Any of the kinds of things that you might think about if you're sort of like trying to review it as art direction or graphic design. It really is about the purpose.
Yeah.
And so those kinds of things are critical. And ultimately, I'm looking for what kind of a person is this, not necessarily like, how did they create this book? Do I believe they created this book? Because like Phil said, I believe that you start with the people first, and then you try to figure out how to make a great team. And then you start to figure out how to make a great service. And frankly, that is going to lead to money. If you like flip it the other way, if you're talking about business first and then you get down to people last, that's a problem. So we're looking for people. We're the only asset that we have in our kind of business. And are they going to be able to lift the crowd up?
I'm telling you.
Let me add just
there's standing ovations.
Let me add. These are the 4 things I look for in a portfolio. Very simple. One, what have you fully defined the problem for me as I'm looking through a single piece of work? Do I know what problem you're trying to solve, and were you part of the that initial conversation? 2, what process did you use to get to the final output? Are there outcomes, and are those outcomes beautiful? I do want to see great work, but 4th. And I've heard this from a number of people. I look for it myself. Who else did you work with?
There you go.
Attribute the work to all the people that were part of it. And if you look at my portfolio, the last page of every case study, I list about 25 to 30 people who were involved. And
will you collaborate? None of this work is individual, to Phil's point. And we are looking for people who know how to create weird partnerships and create amazingly unique work as a result.
That's right. I have to tell you, my most significant accomplishment had 22 people involved in it.
Yeah. Sure.
I may have done it, but I needed all 21 others to help.
Sure.
I also want to touch on, we've got just a few minutes left. Can you believe it? We're more than halfway through.
Oh,
so we've got some people who are new to the design space, including user experience, customer experience, and graphic and digital design. They are not there. This is their second or third careers. They've made transitions, right? So these are people maybe, in their mid-career, if not towards the latter part of their career, that are making this big transition. How can they impress you to get you to look at their work?
Yeah. I think they've got a massive advantage if they take advantage of it. In other words, we are looking for people to bring their whole selves, I think, to the business. When we're deploying designers, certainly in the kind of work that Phil and I tend to focus on, we're helping clients understand their customers better. We're helping clients serve their customers better. And what we're looking for is a wide range of diverse experience and diverse thought to kind of bring to that. I mean, we've had some incredibly successful people come out of the military and jump into creative professions. We've had incredibly successful people who were lawyers and accountants and sort of turn out to be really incredible creative people, because that experience is powerful in informing why to make choices and what is actually going to be a relevant solution. The actual craft of design is critical, but there's so many things happening these days. When you look at computational design, the actual sort of like craft skills of designing, more and more of that is actually being assisted by AI. When you're looking at being able to sort of like react and learn to data, in some ways that's more important than kind of being the artistic genius yourself that is just going to crack it and solve it. An ability to try something and then be humble enough, if it's not working, to try something else because data is proving it out, I think is almost more important than literally being Michelangelo and able to sort of like craft a stroke better than anybody else. So that life experience, I think, helps bring that perspective, and that's powerful. So I would absolutely talk about that. I would not try to hide any kind of past stuff that you have in your life.
I've been getting connected to a lot of people who are in that very same situation, who for whom this is a second career, or they got started in the technology world and want to transition to UX. And I would say there has never been a more exciting time for an actual transition into this space, because it requires that diversity of thought, that diversity of skill. And a lot of these folks are taking their own initiative to do things like General Assembly, online courses, LinkedIn Learning, and of course, the sort of self-assigned design exercises. It's like, oh, if I had to redesign LinkedIn, how would I do it? If I had to redesign iOS, how would I do it? I think those are super cool, and they're very time consuming, but that's like a built-in problem waiting to be solved by a lot of people, and it's a great way to start. You know, this path.
If you guys have extra time to solve any of those problems, I have a laundry list of software and tools. I do want to ask. We've got about 9 minutes left.
Yeah.
So, as you know, there is a little bit of confusion around product designer, around user experience designer, customer experience designer. The hands-on creative part of it is not as confusing as it used to be, right? Now it's these other practices. So Amy in particular said, I'm struggling to get the interview because while the largest percent of my career was in design, I veered off for 2 years to get experience in project management and data analytics. This throws hiring managers off. The recruiters see the value, but hiring managers see this as a negative. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah.
Well, if I may,
full stack designer, Phil, go.
Yeah, I have not spent my entire 23 career in positions that have the title designer. Okay. I spent 4 years and change within a financial services organization doing what I would call, product management or business management, project management, whatever you want to call it. But it's in service. Look, here's how I think about experience. Experience is an outcome. It's not a swim lane. Design can be a swim lane, but experience is an outcome.
Yeah.
And it's and experiences, and we say this in conversations that we have with other people. Experience is the careful orchestration and thoughtful choreography of lots of different types of capabilities, data, engineering, product strategy, et cetera. And
big companies, I think, try to pigeonhole people too much. Increasingly, the really valuable people and frankly, this is the reason I try to cross train like mad myself, is because teams are getting smaller and you want to be able to offer a lot of specialization, and you want to be able to do with 5 people what another competitor has to do with 8 or 9. Right.
That's
and so
20.
Literally what we're looking for are a T-shaped individual. Everyone has a ninja skill, something I go deep on. Right. But an ability to also be a project manager, ability to also do consumer research, ability to also do like raw sort of like wireframes, an ability to understand data and how to leverage it, an ability to literally code. This is why I love hiring junior people, because they often come out cross-trained. They're like, I shot my own video, I cut it, I wrote all the front end code, I'm messing around with Python. I haven't quite figured it out yet, but I'm a designer, and also I wrote this thing. So
you're looking for curiosity.
Yeah.
You're looking for curiosity. And let's just be clear. Right. When you say junior, you don't mean age. You mean junior to the craft.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So you can pick up all these things at any point along the way. So let's get back to an even more interesting question. What about, you're talking about now the homogenization, T-shape of several different capabilities under one domain, right? So let's take user experience. Does that mean that you are interested in hiring user researchers as purists, or would you rather have a user researcher? How do you use user research? Because these people are very specific about who they are.
That's an hour-long question. Phil, I'll give you 30 seconds. Go.
Okay. Well, there are researchers who are evangelical about the research process, and that is all they do, and they'll spend 20 weeks doing it. And then there are strategists or strategically minded people, and I'm not saying researchers are not strategically minded, but that hybrid model that Barry and I have been talking about, a strategist, and it could be a product designer, a full stack product designer, someone who can go from strategy to code, like ideally if you're a unicorn, right? So it's really about the hypothesis creation and generation and testing and learning to bring a product to market faster, not being paralyzed by analysis. And that does not mean that research is not important, but it needs to be a guiding force along that full trajectory of stuff to get something live as quickly.
I think it's kind of about maturity and scale and things like that. Like there are teams that where I've had only 2 people, and it might be technically someone's an experienced designer and technically someone's a project manager, but they're doing research. They're actually doing sort of feedback loops, and they need to have that skill. But then there are other things like projects that we've done for like Exxon or things like that, where it actually is really pretty critical to have a team of people that are going deep on exactly what's going on with the audience in Russia and their sort of like feeling about like, you know, the fuel business. Yeah. So I think there's incredible value in having some people who are deep, but you shouldn't only have it one way or the other. A huge issue that I think we bump up against all the time is creative people want to also be involved in that feedback loop, sort of that research in reverse, right? The sort of the rush to hypothesis, make something and get the feedback. That's different than going deep on and looking for like macro trends or sort of like deep sort of customer analysis. So I don't think that it has to be one way or the other, but I think it's the scale of the engagement that is going to determine how much specialization you should have.
I think the more that's at risk, the more research that needs to be done. Just that simple.
I think that's true. I think if it's a true product design thing, there's a type of research that's done. If it's a full-on service design thing, that's a different kind of research that needs to be done. And every project you should bring a utility knife to it, a Leatherman, if you will, and you pick the blade that fits the need of the cut.
Yeah.
Oh, creative people's brains. Honest to God, how you think of these things. So, all right, we've got 3 minutes left, and I want to get to a very sensitive subject. So, Barry, you had to let Phil go.
Well, so we both were let go, quite frankly. So think about it, though. We were there 11 years. There was a long stretch where I thought I would never work anywhere else again. And it was really, it's a sad moment, but companies kind of go through life cycles. And honestly, what I would sort of say is, you know, it wasn't just Phil and myself. There was an entire restructuring and a significant number of people were let go, and it continues, frankly, at our past company and at obviously many companies around. So I have valued having people like Phil, and frankly, having the entire community of people who are still at the company where he and I both worked. It's been immensely supportive. It's a very different time, I think, to kind of be out suddenly sort of looking, because it is such a shared experience, and it may not feel that way. We're all locked in our, you know, guest bedrooms or closets or wherever the heck people are trying to work from these days. But this is a very shared experience, you know, and I find networking and talking with other people just an immense amount of empathy for what, you know, if folks are working, they're sort of grateful to be working, and they're empathetic for people who are out there looking and much more willing to help. And I certainly find a lot of empathy amongst other people who are going through shared experience. The community of people out there trying to help each other find their next amazing thing is vast. And I like to look at the bright side of that, and just am really encouraged by the creative community that I'm connected to coming together to help so many people. It's really been incredibly rewarding.
That's wonderful. What about you, Phil? How are you doing through all this?
I have one, like Barry, and Barry's part of it. I feel very fortunate to have a very strong support network. The support of family, friends, and colleagues and former coworkers, and you know, I also have the unique and good fortune to have a wife who is not only a former recruiter and HR professional, but is also currently a mental health professional and counselor. And I would say,
using all of those skills with Phil. Yes.
Yeah. I would say her superpower in that regard is tough love. because she knows that and Barry knows this about me as well, that I do have a tendency to obsess a little bit and maybe wallow, and neither of them have allowed me to do that. And I hope, I think my biggest coping mechanism through all of this is not necessarily by helping myself, but it's by helping others.
Yes.
Because there are so many people in the same situation, not just others who are looking for work, but the people who are still in jobs where they feel just constant sense of fear.
Yeah.
And to the extent that my wife gets approbation through helping others in her work, so do I. And so I think I'll speak for Barry in this particular regard as well. We get joy from helping others, and that in turn gives us happiness.
Yeah, 100%.
That's wonderful. So the way that I try to describe this to other people, because I'm in the same boat, right? So so many of us are in the same boat. So what I try to describe is that, companies had to cut muscle. This is not something that they necessarily wanted to do. This is not something that they planned to do. That it was a point in the economy and a point in history, really, that just said, we've got to cut muscle in order to keep whatever shell we have remaining intact, right? So things will turn around. And the reason that that Phil and I actually got connected was through a mutual friend, Joe. And thank you, Joe, again. And come to find out, we've got tons of connections between the three of us, right? I didn't realize how connected we were, but we hadn't met before a tragedy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it takes, and this is what it means to be part of a community. And in good times and in bad, it's the bad times that you realize when your best friends are there for you. And so, when you've got people like Joe and Phil and Barry in your corner who aren't going to listen to you moan and groan, they're going to make sure that you stand up and keep moving on. And that's what Live with Lee is all about. And I want to thank you both so very much for coming on this broadcast and giving us some hope, some inspiration, and a very different view.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And we would be happy to continue the conversation with people. I mean, Phil and I, part of one of the things that we've done to try to stay in touch and to sort of offer hope to people, we've created a podcast, if anyone is interested, called What Bubbles Up. It's available on 8 platforms: Apple, Spotify, Google, or everywhere your podcasts are found, where we basically talk with a special guest every week about how they come up with ideas, their process for coming up with ideas, how they know that ideas are great. And it's become an incredibly sort of powerful resource, I think, to keep our community together, to hear and learn from other people in all ranges of different creative professions, to learn something, but more importantly, I think to sort of feel a sense of momentum. If you're stuck in a job and you're worried, if you're out there looking for a job, I think it's an awesome conversation. It's just 30 minutes, so join us for a beer if anyone wants to. What Bubbles Up?
I have it right on the screen. What Bubbles Up podcast, and they can find it on any of their favorite podcasts.
Yeah, wonderful.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Again, thank you both so very much for joining, and thank you all for attending. Amy, thank you for your feedback, and for those who remain silent, I have a feeling we'll be hearing from you later.
All right, wonderful. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for the time, Lee.